Yeah, so Electra, pleasure to meet you. I'd love to hear more about your background, what you're working on at the moment. I understand you recently got accepted into Techstars as well, so congratulations. Just love to get that kind of 2-3 minute rundown.
Yeah, sure. So Techstars actually was last year, but my background is waste. I've been a waste consultant, and so I consult on waste. Consult on how to move your waste in companies economically and diverting landfill, and also a commodity trader for the last 10 years. Prior to this, I worked in fintech, MasterCard, Global Collect, some of these guys. And today what we're doing is we have XWorks. It's a sustainability fintech climate tech startup focused on increasing recycling rates, creating transparency and around accountability around the movement of waste commodities. So last year it was Techstars. We got accepted into Cities of the Future, Torino.
And Electra, I read that's XWorks is blockchain based, right?
It is blockchain based. Right now, today, what we've done is we've developed the MVP, and the blockchain. The idea is that we will incorporate a smart contract blockchain in order to create contracts between two parties that will create accountability, manage the compliance and transparency, so that if anybody wanted to audit it, they can look inside and say, oh, okay, that makes sense, for like surveillance or the environment agencies or government officials, that sort of thing.
Right, because that's something probably our listeners, as well as definitely myself and James and I have had conversations about this. When you have sort of commercial propositions that include blockchain, I think a lot of people kind of hear that and they're like, what's the difference between that and like a centralized platform? Because I guess to a lot of people who aren't privy to like the know-how of how blockchain works or what its utilities are, it just seems like another buzzword of, oh, blockchain. What sort of cryptocurrency is that? What are your thoughts on that? And then also, in what, like, you sort of touched on it there, but how do you justify using blockchain as an integral feature of XWorks?
Very good question. You know, we've had these conversations with our CTO, Adrian, and he doesn't like blockchain. He's like, I think people use it all the time just to use it, just to sound cool, just to be something, oh, you got blockchain, let's get funded. Great. No. So we thought about this, and we're still kind of on the fence if a smart contract is the right way for what we need it for. But we have thought about this really well, and we find that a smart contract, to understand why we went for it. So let's take a step back into the trading world. When people buy and sell commodities, there's actually quite a few parties involved, cross-border transactions. So from here to India, you've got shipping lines, you've got transport lines, you've got various parties involved. And all these parties are responsible if anything goes wrong with that commodity. So if it gets caught along the way, let's say, and it's heavily contaminated, everybody is involved. Everybody in the chain involved will have a problem. And so the reason why we thought a smart contract might be interesting is because it holds the parties accountable. So me, you, James, anybody else, all parties are held accountable, and all parties have to commit to completing their part of the contract in order for funds to get released and to minimize dumpings in foreign lands, et cetera.
Right, so there's a much more transparent record of what's happened. So the money's only going through to the next stage as long as that transparency and all the conditions within the smart contract are met.
Exactly.
Right. I guess that's the powerful aspect of smart contracts, in that you can programmatically create requirements that must be met in order for money to go through. So it reduces the opportunity for corruption in a lot of cases.
Exactly. I mean, even today, we're still kind of battling with the idea, do we need the smart contract? Can we do it in another way? So we're still kind of thinking about it. We are looking at the Polkadot a blockchain. I don't know if you guys heard of the JUR network, JUR.
I haven't heard of it, no.
Yeah. Interesting network. What they've done is they've created a network based on Polkadot. and they found a way to manage the international jurisdiction. So when I'm shipping from here to India, I'm governed by the laws of the merchant. So it's laws of CNF, et cetera. And they've managed to find a way to deal with these complexities of the law, the jurisdiction, which makes sense in our case because of how it's traded. So we're kind of looking into that as an option. And what's also interesting is when there's a network of traders and when there's a dispute, they tend to go into a group and they vote. And that's something that the network does. So, okay, it has crypto, and I don't know how ready the industry is ready to use crypto at this point. But, there is a possibility we could say, and you can do it offline. Okay, we do fiat to fiat, use offline, but use the JER network for dispute handling, et cetera, on when there's commodities, in question.
Okay. And this is all for waste management.
This is all for the movement, the buying and the selling of waste commodities. So it could be paper, cardboard, plastics, forestry, whatever.
And for people not familiar with the life cycle of this trading life cycle, could you explain that, including myself, because I'm not familiar with how these things are traded and where they're shipped and how it all works?
So it's huge. So every month from Europe, 3.3 million tons of waste products are traded. They're traded outside of Europe. The UK moves 40% of their waste products because they just don't have the infrastructure to handle it. So they move it outside. And they tend to go to any country that will take it at the highest rate, whether they have the infrastructure or not. And sometimes they'll get it in these countries, and it could be India. You hear stories where India put a ban, China put a ban, whatever. So they'll send it for the highest rate, and then by the time it gets there, it's contaminated. It was crap anyway. It shouldn't have been in there. And so because they don't have the infrastructure to sort it or to handle it, they end up dumping it and burning it. And so now Europe is putting a big pressure and saying no more can you send to countries outside OECD region, and no more can you send multi-stream plastics, for example. So now the European Union is putting rules making mandatory digital tracking of waste, mandatory regulations. But in general, there's like this cowboy and Indians kind of world out there. It's a shadow world, actually, that trades in billions of euros, dollars, pounds, you name it, every month, every year. It's insane, the amount of money that it's being traded.
So they're accepting the waste in return for a fee, basically to get it off the hands of people where there's tighter regulations to actually dispose of it.
Yeah, so it's big business. So trading in these type of commodities, it's actually called the seventh resource. And right now, today, they're trading, any type of waste resource, they're trading it. And you have these traders that come in that could be a one-man band. It could be, a company set up with 40 people in it, big companies, and they're just moving plastics. Waste management, they recycle, they'll bale it, collect it, sort it, and then they'll sell it for profit. It's all for profit. It's all for money. And before, it was not that tightly regulated, whereas now it's moving into regulations.
Something I'm really, really interested in knowing is, do you know if the market capitalization for this industry has gone up or down over the last 5 years? Because up, seriously, because my sort of logical intuition was that it would have gone down, given that there's a movement away from these kind of products, right?
Yeah, it's gone up. It's growing. So when we started XWorks, the industry was valued at 1.7 trillion. It is now being estimated by 2027, 2.5 trillion. It's insane. Instead of recycling more and avoiding landfill more, we've actually decreased. I mean, we're supposed to improve recycling rates, divert from landfill, and it's gone backwards.
Mm-hmm. So was the decision so you said you worked in this industry before you were with XWorks as a trader yourself?
Yes.
So is this something you've always been quite passionate about, this area? Or
I fell into this world. I honestly did.
It chose you.
Yeah, it kind of chose me. Absolutely. It chose me. About 10 years ago, I kind of like got out of corporate. We were talking about corporate London. I used to work for Click and Buy, and I thought, this is horrible. I don't like it. I don't know what I'm doing. What's my reason for being? I didn't get it. And so anyway, big restructure. I left, and I thought, now what am I going to do? I could sell what? My consultancy of what? I didn't know. So I tried a few things. Then I met my now co-founder, Alex, who introduced me to the world of waste and recycling. I remember standing on my first, I call it dump. It was a waste site full of plastics and stuff. And I was standing at the top there thinking, this is what I got my degrees for, to stand on a pile of crap. This is horrible. It was just horrible. And, from there, I thought, no, I'm going to do something about it. That's just my nature. I like to do something. I'm not lazy. So over a period of a year, I really grew something called UPVC windows. I bought and sold UPVC windows, and I went from zero to trading 300 tons a month. And I made a lot of money out of that. And then I thought, okay, let's get into import and export. Let's do logistics. My brother in the US, he does logistics. And so I got into logistics. I got into trucking. I got into sort of like really down and dirty into the trenches. I started getting involved in waste and plastics and metals, and really started getting more and more involved. So over the years, I think I've done around, together with Alex, we did about 500,000 tons of waste and recycled materials. That's a lot. That's a lot.
That's insane. It's crazy the direction your life can go from just a few miscellaneous decisions and then things coming together, right?
Exactly. And so I got fed up with this whole cowboy and Indian. I have big aspirations. I really wanted to grow. I wanted to become a millionaire, like we were saying, and it wasn't happening. I kept coming across just time wasters and just a messy industry full of like claims and problems and issues, and nobody there to help you. And I thought, let me do something about it. That was in 2016, not the right time. And then around 2020, we thought, let's take the money we made from our proceeds of our other business and invest it into XWorks. And that's what we have today.
How come 2016 wasn't the right time?
It just wasn't. The idea came, but the idea came really about an association. What if there was an association that accredited people at companies to show how trustworthy they were? That was the initial idea. And then it just wasn't the right time, life, circumstances, money, all of that. And then right before COVID, we thought, let's do something for our network. And as we started building out for our network, we started talking to our colleagues in the industry, and we realized we're dealing with a much, much bigger problem. And so then we hired our first hire, our UX lead, Anthony, and he went and just specifically talked to the industry away from us. And we uncovered that we were dealing with an industry, a global problem.
Wow.
That accreditation idea seems like it will work quite well today, right? With the whole ESG landscape. Is that something you would ever return to or try and incorporate into your current product?
That's exactly what we're doing. So we're accrediting. So and we're gamifying it. So we're bringing the idea from the tech world, from the gaming world, and we're creating trust levels and gamification of that. So imagine you come on, you have your first level of authentication, you get ID verified. So you're a basic ID verified. You can chat, you can post. But if you really want to start getting your commodities out there to a better level, you've got to improve your trust rating. And so we're looking at gamifying and accrediting these players, this value chain. So it doesn't matter who you are, but you have to get to a stage where your licenses have all been checked out. You can actually accept X material. And so then we go into digital passport. So the reason for the smart contract is because at the end of it, we want to create a digital passport of that movement. So 25 tons went to India. Boom. Now we know where it came from, where it's gone to, everybody in the middle. Here's all the pictures, geo-tagged, etc. That here's the passport for that material.
And you said this was being done on like WhatsApp before, right? I read somewhere that this is literally being done so informally. There's no traces. You said no kind of record of what's happening. They still do it, right? And
they're still doing it.
This is the whole market you're trying to upend, right? Is that the problem that you first had, that you first identified, was like we need to build a product around it? Was it like the kind of sheer informality of all the trading that was going on?
Yeah, that's actually, you hit the nail on the head. We saw like WhatsApp was they're doing that constantly in there. And we thought, we want to disrupt this. How are we going to do that? So we decided to build something around the concept of having a full chat functionality where you have the social angle of being able to create your site mini groups and share information, et cetera, but then add in highly structured data so that we can track all the information line by line and then add in compliance. So we took the idea from WhatsApp.
Actually, if I'm a trader coming on, like what's really in it for me? Because if I'm already on WhatsApp and I'm happy doing my trading, obviously you start to think of all these like kind of social media and community apps where they have like strong network effects, right? And it's like, what is that pull that's taking me off WhatsApp onto your app?
Okay, so well, you have to understand they do business on LinkedIn and WhatsApp. So they go on LinkedIn, they find somebody, I'm interested, then they go to WhatsApp, or then they find themselves in a WhatsApp group. Great conversation, but what happens on WhatsApp is, how do I know it's you? How do I know your LinkedIn profile is actually you? I think LinkedIn announced in the last 6 months of 2022, they had 21 million fake accounts. 21 million fake accounts. Let me repeat that. That's insane.
That's
wild.
So
that's like 2-3%, I think, of accounts.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So then they go on WhatsApp, which is great, but then I don't trust you. How can I trust you? And so now I'm spending more time chatting with you. Spending time, it could be weeks or months, trying to figure out, do I want to do business with you? Eventually, I might say, okay, sounds reasonable, sounds all right. And then, you've got a quality problem, you've got whatever problems. And so it just, what we do is we give them right now, today, that guarantee that we know who the customer is. We know who you're dealing with so that you can start trading safely. And that's the purpose of it.
Very interesting. You've applied like a marketplace model to a completely overlooked market that most people don't even know exists. Did you set out with that? Did you kind of model it on these more traditional marketplaces, or did it come from a point of view of more the regulatory side and trying to overcome those?
I always say that XWorks is a data platform, a data integrations platform. Why? Because we are able to connect to any business via API that makes sense, government, environment, But then because we're credentializing, we're able to create an exchange, a marketplace on steroids, if you will. So the marketplace is there to enable the information inflow. We need the information to come in so that we can generate the analytics that the data platform was set up to do. So the more data we have, like of listings, commodities, location, pricing, et cetera, the more that we're able to take and analyze that information. So that eventually we're able to go, hey, UK, guess what? 39% of your waste is going to X country, and this shouldn't be going because it's outside of there. And how can we help you improve your recycling rates? That's the long vision.
And are the governments and regulations in Europe kind of, you mentioned that they're kind of doubling down on this and trying to enforce this more closely. Is that kind of the momentum that XWorks is gonna ride off? Because it sounds like in this industry, there's a lot of people that are probably, if they knew what you're trying to do, they'd probably be quite unhappy simply because they're making a lot of money from bad practices. Yeah. So I imagine there'll be some resistance there as well.
Yeah, definitely. There is resistance. There is the old way of doing business. Why should I change? So yeah, we're up against that, but the momentum is here. In the UK, it's mandatory this year to digitally track waste, all waste. And in Europe, by 2025, all products, including end of life, will need a digital passport. So whether they like it or not, they're going to have to do it. So, that's the momentum that's our why now kind of why we're doing it now.
Makes a lot of sense. And how do you keep up to date with the changing government regulations? Like, what's the best kind of source for that to stay on top of?
We have insiders that work for the EU regulations. So I've got a EU regulations lawyer who keeps me up to date. and she works as an advisor. I can't say any names, but basically she keeps me up to date with what's going on with the regulations and where I should be focusing on and any introductions. This year, we're going to the World Summit of Information Society by the UN in March. So I've got various
Where's that taking place?
That's taking place in Geneva.
Oh, awesome. Nice.
So I've got various lawyers surrounding me, to be honest, from data experts, from regulations, and all of them are plugging me into what's happening now on the legal side.
That's perfect. That's the best. Sounds like the best way to do it.
It's got a series of moles just in each organization, just feeding you back information. That's crazy. But it just seems it just seems like you're taking on quite a lot of risk there, right? You're not. It doesn't seem like a very predictable market if you're constantly having to like regulate not only maybe market sentiment but also regulations on top of that. How do you kind of reconcile that?
It can feel like that, but look. The traders are going to have a difficult time accepting something new. We already know this. But they're our biggest market. We just have to show them that we can give them trustworthy business and they will come. And we're already seeing them coming. We've already got a database of 21 gigabytes of information that has already been uploaded since the end of October. That's not a small number. So they're already coming and they're already staying there. Once we develop out and we show them that we can help them reduce their claims, this is the number one issue. Anybody that buys and sells, we can help them reduce their claims and help them to stay compliant in the ever-changing landscape. This will add more benefit and value and keep them evolving the trust with XWorks. Whereas on the evolution of the landscape, on regulation, sure, but it's moving all in one direction, and that's digital. And that's the direction it's going in. And so that's the direction we're going in that we saw, which is why we created a data platform before a marketplace.
Very interesting, actually.
One thing I want to ask is, does the aspect that there will be resistance and the path is not clear, does that excite you on a personal level that you're tackling a hard problem and it's not something that's just straightforward and clear cut?
Yeah, I think it is exciting. It gives me a lot of gray hairs, but at the same time, if the problem is huge, then the benefit is huge. And it's not just about the benefit financial gain, but the benefit to create change is huge.
Absolutely.
And so that's what is exciting to me. It's the fact that we can actually truly affect the environment, affect the change. And sure, I'm not doing this. I do want some profit out of this, but I think my ultimate goal is to see how we can change the way we view this type of commodity. It's not just trash or garbage. It's a valuable asset and a resource that has a tag associated to it, but is being mistreated and mishandled and dumped and illegally burnt, etc. And there's no reason for it. It's like there's no reason for hunger in today's world. There's no reason for this. So the big game, the ultimate game is what excites me.
So just to quickly ask a question on that, what is the right way to dispose of waste?
Look, people ask me that all the time, but it's like, if you go to Holland, there's a right way because the infrastructure is there. If you come to the UK, the infrastructure is not here. So it doesn't matter how well we sort our waste. If the infrastructure is not there, then it's still going to be mistreated when it gets to the aggregator or the waste management guy.
Yeah.
So it really goes back to a country, how well are they set up to manage this? And this is where we should be spending money into, like setting up an infrastructure that can handle it. The Nordics, very well set up. Germany, Holland, very well set up. You go to Southern European countries, not well set up. You go to Italy, it's so diverse. Southern, anywhere below Rome, complete mess. Anything above, you get further to the border, better. And even in Torino, in different areas, one part of the city well set up, the other completely a mess. Like, how is this possible?
So
but it's just...
What does good infrastructure look like? What does it involve? What does it involve that the country has?
It has to basically guide the consumer on how to separate properly. It needs to already have the ability to collect these well-sorted resources into the prospective bins. And then once it gets from the prospective bins and it gets to the aggregator, that aggregator then has a better quality material to then bulk and store and sell onwards. So it really starts with making sure that the consumer knows what they're doing and then having the ability to take this well-sorted material. I was at Slush last year in November, and I really loved it. I actually took a picture of the sign, and there where the bins, the rubbish cans were, it said raw materials. And so there's a shift happening with consumers from rubbish trash, doesn't matter, somewhere in the corner. They actually had it highlighted on a big, with spotlights on it saying raw material sorting, and they had it in the different categories.
Well, all these trading in commodities, is there not an environmental impact with the transport of them? I think you just touched on there briefly. Do you have any insight into kind of what's the trade-off between maybe disposing or burning of the rubbish and then actually actively encouraging more trading, which I assume, correct me if I'm wrong, will be taken on planes and big freight ships and all of this?
There was a study done by MIT Seattle that showed that basically they tracked, they put trackers into different types of waste, and they tracked it all around the country and all around the world, and they found that it exchanged many, many hands. And so the effect that has is CO2 miles and plastic miles. And what that means is the more CO2 miles, the more carbon emission. And I think part of the ambition is to decrease that, right? So that we can help the environment and help the climate. And so by trading, the idea, the concept with XWorks is that you connect to us, we certify the players, we certify the movement, and then we connect you to the shortest possible route of CO2 and plastic miles. So we decrease the amount of CO2 and plastic miles that particular shipment would have had if you had used many different parties. And we reduce the amount of parties that are touching it.
That's really interesting, actually. Thanks for clarifying that, because I wanted to touch as well. You said kind of, you found your purpose in the waste industry and you're actually having a chance to kind of give back and help people see it in a new light. I think sometimes you speak to people and it's like they knew what they were passionate about from a young age and they then later tried to find a way to commercialize it. It kind of sounds like you've done the inverse of that. Like you have always, correct me if I'm wrong, you've always wanted to make a positive impact on the world, but you spent years trying to find what that pocket may be. You fell into waste and you found it as a vehicle that can help you enact change. Yeah,
Exactly. I would have never thought that I would be in this world. Like, ask me like 20 years ago, I'd be like, I don't know.
Well, are those the trends you're thinking about in the back of your mind, like climate change and, are those the kind of big picture trends?
For me, I'm thinking really about climate change, yes, but more really I've seen the effects that landfilling does to an environment, and I've seen the effects of dumping. And so I really want to affect this change, which has a result of affecting climate. And so for us, we've created our own theory of change, and we're tracking, for example, the number of tons diverted equals the number of tons CO2 reduced, also equals the number of compliant deals. So we're tracking, we're going to be tracking all of this that will then result in a higher ESG. We actually will have over time a multiplicative ESG score for us and for whoever invests in XWorks.
And how do you define that ESG score out of interest? Because as I understand it, there's so many different ways to do it.
So many.
So do you have like a proprietary way you do it? Are you going just off regulations, which you've kind of said are ever changing anyway? Like, what's your thesis around that?
Well, we're looking at something called the theory of change, and we're also working with a biologist. So what we're saying is, if we can show that over a period of 5 years, we've diverted X amount of plastics or X amount of waste, let's call it, 72,000 tons, that will have a direct effect on the environment. So it should have an improvement on the environment, improvement on the CO2, an improvement on more compliant deals, that will have an effect on the ESG scores. Now, ESG scores, as you said, it's so huge, it's so big. So really, it's just looking at what we can do to affect that.
Yeah, I think sometimes, from my perspective anyway, climate is it's such a complex problem. I think the only real change will come through things like energy innovation. But at the same time, there's a second part of that problem, which is perhaps more like the software realm of solutions and what you guys are doing as well, which is like, how can we limit the very, very near-term impact of our actions and kind of mold them into a more sustainable way? Because I think it's well understood now that all of this kind of energy and innovation we've been hearing about for decades, but it just takes so long to implement, long R&D to commercialization cycles and this and that. So trying to find, I think it's great advice for anyone who's looking to get into climate as well and make a big impact. You don't necessarily have to be like a scientist by trade or building, hardware products from the ground up. You can think about what are the processes in place now that you can change, alter, and mold to make it more sustainable for the next, 2 to 3 years, as opposed to kind of 10, 20 years.
Exactly. But our long-term strategy, we've got short-term, mid-term, and long-term, but our long-term strategy is really the data and the knowledge that attained over a period of 5-10 years. That will be our most valuable asset, and that will be the drivers of change.
Fantastic.
Okay. Yeah, I just find it so fascinating adding objective numbers to this topic. Like, it's when you're able to say, we've diverted 72 million tons away. It's like adding a concrete number to a real world thing. It gives it so much more value and it backs its credibility so much. One thing I was really interested in is because earlier on you mentioned 2 things I want to touch on. One is that you hated the corporate world. You realized it wasn't for you. At what point did that happen? And then you also mentioned about generally having a quite upbeat personality, looking for solutions rather than dwelling too much on problems. So when you came into this industry, it was like, why the hell is everybody playing the blame game here? Why is everybody being so lazy? Like, did you think that personality trait had a role to play in you kind of leaving the corporate world and be like, right, I'm going to make a change in my own life rather than blaming my circumstances and find the situation better for me? So what was that internal process like? And then if you were to give advice to somebody who wanted to do that, for example, one of our listeners, let's say, who is maybe working in the corporate world now, hating their life, hating their job, looking for more fulfillment, what sort of advice would you have for an individual in that circumstance?
Yeah, so really my corporate life started, I was selling the payment functionality. So, when you go online and you put in your credit card, that functionality is what I was selling. And I was actually in a sector that nobody wanted to work in, which was dating sites, recurring payments, music, small. I actually worked with Square Enix and some of the gaming companies, these small micro payments. And fun. It was fun. I went to a lot of great events. And when I started going to all these events that everybody else was like, how come you get to go to the cool ones? I'm like, you guys didn't want to do this dirty job. So anyway, it was fun. I had a lot of fun and I'm going to keep saying that, but it left me empty. I'm like, what am I selling? This payment solution for what? And so eventually for me to sell something, I have to be somebody that believes in what I'm selling. It has to be a solution that I believe in and that I'm passionate about and that, is going to help you and do something better. And so eventually, after several events and several great contracts, I just lost it. I was like, I just don't feel good anymore about selling this payment solution. I don't even believe in it anymore. I mean, who cares? And so it just grew over a few years to like 3 or 4 years. And then eventually I decided, okay, it's time to do something about it. Circumstances helped me do that. And I just jumped ship. I really didn't think. I remember coming back on the train from London thinking, now what am I going to do? There's no money. There's nothing. What am I going to do? And then, things kind of worked out. But back to the type of person I am, I'm very driven. I'm very, if I put my mind to something, it gets done. But I'm also like a weightlifter. So I lift weights. And so lifting weights also helps you stay committed and focused and dedicated. So if you dedicate 3-4 days, 5 days a week to doing it, it keeps you have a mental drive.
Oh, yeah.
And so this helps you stay committed to other things. And that's what I found in my life, that I've been kind of, okay, it's been up and down, whatever, life gets in the way, but I always go back to it to help me stay committed. Mm-hmm. And so
are we going to see you at Paris 2024? Is that the next big move?
No, you know what? About 12 years ago, I was going to compete, and then here in the UK, and then things got
Shit happens.
messy.
Yeah. Were you a power lifter?
Not a power lifter. I was a weightlifter, bodybuilder.
Yeah. Cool. Nice.
Oh no, not Olympic lifts or just bodybuilding.
No Olympic lifts.
You would have looked to compete in bodybuilding. Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Nah, we're both huge fitness guys as well, and I have been my whole life. It's something. So I was just speaking about it someone earlier today. He was like XD1 athlete, like Swedish junior champ as well in triple jump, and I think you could always spot people that like fitness even without looking at them and their body and their demeanor, because of the way they talk and the drive that they have. And I don't think I've ever met someone who got far in the gym or in sport who didn't kind of show that fire somewhere else in their lifestyle, right? You do get those types of people that's like, gym is everything to me and I have no other skills and I'm going to go all out into it. But I bet you talk to 90% of people that you meet in the gym, they're going hard somewhere else in their life because it just carries forward. It's just age old advice. It's timeless advice that I wish more people would listen to. Taking care of your physical health has such an impact up here.
Yeah, I think now I strike a balance between spiritual and physical. Physical meaning the exercise that I do, and the spiritual gymnastics that you have to do in order to stay balanced, to stay centered. And so it's you don't want to go one way or the other way. And so I think that whatever your beliefs are, it's up to you. But I think that you need to have a nice balance.
Can you flesh that out a bit more? Well, what do you mean by like spiritual gymnastics? Like,
I think that I'm not a believer in religion. I believe in universal natural law in the universe, and that I think that meditation is really my religion, if you call it. And that's what I mean by spiritual gymnastics. You got to work on yourself, on your inner and your outer. Your outer being your physical, your exercise that you do, etc., and your inner meaning like how centered are you, and how are you working on being your authentic self?
Yeah. How aligned are you with your true intentions, and like what are your intentions day to day, and how aligned are they with your long-term goals, right?
Exactly. And then so I guess that goes back to kind of leads into your question, like what's the advice? It's really understanding who you are and how you can contribute to the world and whatever skill that you have, and you do it in your way. Everybody else's way is not the right way. Your way is your way, and you have to find that within yourself, and then from there express it into the world.
Oh, I love that. That's really, really fantastic advice. I think a lot of people kind of look at other people that are successful and think, oh, how can I emulate that person? Or how can I become 20% or 50% or 75% of that person? It's like, why don't you try focus on becoming 150% of yourself?
Yes.
Best for yourself and what you do best, and how you can find a way to add that into the world.
Exactly.
Do you think a lot of people underdevelop these kind of insights over the course of their life, where they don't almost understand what it is that they can add to the world? Because I've heard a lot of people, when I said this to a lot of people, they kind of come back to me and say, oh, well, Suraj, I just don't know like where I can use my skills in the world. Like, what job can I do? And I'm like, well, what do you actually like doing?
Yeah, I can empathize with that, really. To be fair, I remember like thinking, what am I going to do and how am I going to do it? And I tried a few things. I even tried being a host of throwing house parties at some point, and that was fun for a minute. And I was like, this is not sustainable. So I think you got to try.
Five hangovers later, like, nope, need for please.
We hosted like 3 parties. I had this other guy I was doing it with. We hosted 3 parties. We had a great turnout. The first one was awesome. Made some money. Then we traveled and got DJs. It was great. But I'm like, this is not. Yeah.
And where were you holding these? Were you just holding these people
in London?
In random houses?
No, in clubs in London.
Oh, right. Okay.
I even had like a network of DJs and performers. It was great, and dress up and all that kind of stuff.
I was speaking to a DJ the other day actually, and he was doing that in his 20s and 30s. He exactly what you said. Time in his life, he was getting paid enough, traveled the world, and then he woke up one day, he turned 40. He was like, "What the fuck am I doing? I'm a 40-year-old DJ. Is this going to be my legacy?" He just had like he almost like woke up with like a moment of clarity, and he's like, "Nah, I need to get the hell out of it."
Just like, this is not going to work. And I think really you just gotta try. You gotta try stuff. Don't be lazy. Go out there and don't be afraid of failing. People associate failing with like, oh, I'm such a failure. I'm never going to do something again. But no, it's just another way of figuring out which direction you want to go in and what you're going to do and how you're going to do it.
That as well, I think, is that people just give up too easily. I've certainly done that in the past. It's like you find something that you has strong potential of you being interested in, but you don't see the results after a few weeks. You give it up. You don't appreciate that people who are out there building unicorns have actually been invested in it for 3-4 years at least. When everyone was telling them it's a bad idea, when they weren't, those times when they weren't getting traction, when people were calling them a failure, and they kept on going. And I think it's about building up all those experiences such that you can find that thing is like, even if I get nothing out of it, I would have, commercially, I would have got so much out of it personally if I work on it for the next 5 years, and I will learn so much. I think people underappreciate that aspect and just choose the safe option where it's like, all right, my progress can be more kind of measured by, my salary increase or, some other more determinant factor.
It's like we were discussing before the episode, Electra, where there's a shift towards instant gratification. James, me and Electra were discussing this, and it was like, my auntie was telling me recently, like in the past, if you wanted a piece of information, you go to the library and read a book for about 2 weeks to get that information, plus about 300 other pages of information related to that topic. And you'd get so much out of it, like you just described, someone working on something for 5 years. Whereas now, the analogy is like people just pick up their mobile phone and Google it, and they've got it in 2 seconds, but they forget it in 2 hours.
Yeah, there's no effort. And that's why I always go back to bodybuilding and lifting weights. It's because in order to see results, you need to sustain consistently over a period of time. Yeah. And this is why, gym memberships love it in January and February and then drop off rate, but they still get the money. And then they wonder, hey, how come I'm not seeing the results? It's because they're not consistent. And they think they're going to happen overnight. It just doesn't. And so that's why it's like consistency over time equals results.
Yeah.
And building a company, a startup, is the most hardest thing I've ever experienced. But I love it because I won't do anything else. I'd rather take this than go work 9 to 5 in London with X amount of money or whatever. I'd take this any day.
Any day of the week, yeah. That's the first biggest lesson of the gym. What you just said. I think the second one is it's this beautiful equation where you don't see in many other disciplines, where it's like exactly what you put in is what you get out. Like you are in full control of your progress in the gym when it comes to weightlifting and bodybuilding. And people will, novices or people who aren't as experienced will always try and lean on genetics and make external arguments. Like anyone experienced in the space knows, an absolute fact, an immutable equation where it's like you put in the time, the effort, you get your diet right, your sleep right, and you will see results. And of course, the same thing can be said for building a company, right? Sometimes you have to look at yourself in the mirror. I mean, literally anything in life, even a job search or like, something mundane. It's like you look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day. It's like, did I give it my all? Should I be disappointed that I didn't get this because I sold myself short in some aspects? And I think a lot of people aren't honest with themselves and they give themselves too much slack, which kind of releads to this mentality of just, allowing themselves too much leeway, and they kind of feel sorry for themselves.
Absolutely.
They don't put the onus on themselves to improve.
Absolutely. I mean, you got to be passionate about what you're doing, because you're going to get a lot of no's. You're going to get a lot, what the hell are you doing? Why are you doing it? It doesn't make sense. And so you've got to overcome this. And for me, every no isn't having to overcome, well, maybe I didn't explain it right. Maybe I should do it properly. I don't know. Let me rephrase it. And it's always, I'm working at this 24/7. In my mind, I am working at it. And during the day, I work at it. I do detach at some point. But, you got to stay persistent and committed, because you're going to get a lot of no's and a lot of slaps along the way. And the first no could knock a weaker person down.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You got to be like thick-skinned towards rejection.
In fact, I actually have a Bruce Lee quote about don't speak negatively about yourself, even as a joke. So Bruce Lee is great.
Like stoicism as well, isn't it? It's a very similar concept. Yeah. Never be heard complaining by anyone, including yourself.
Exactly. And watch your thoughts. This goes back to the mental, spiritual gymnastics. How you treat yourself, how you do really affects everything that you do in life. So yeah, it's a combination. It's a fine balance.
It's a great point, actually. I think a lot of us, well, I know Suraj and I, we do this almost unconsciously, I think. But it's really nice that you kind of set out and defined it, because it is a case that I remember when I was younger, I used to always negatively reinforce myself and kind of use like bad thoughts to spur myself on. But I think as you get older, it becomes a little more about imbuing yourself with positive thoughts. It's like, I've done everything I can in this situation. I can be the person that I want to become. I just need to put the work in, and kind of reinforcing positively. I don't know if you ever had experience kind of giving yourself negative thoughts. I know there was a time in your life when you were like, oh, I don't know which way I want to go. Are there any other times where you've kind of used negative thoughts to spur you on?
Yeah. I didn't turn out to be so amazing overnight. No,
Yeah.
I had to go through a patch. During when I was younger, it was like I used negativity to spur me forward or hold me back. And that's why I keep going back to the spiritual gymnastics. I'll just call it for the conversation. But it's actually working and reviewing yourself. There's no right or wrong. It's just how we react to something. So yeah, I messed up. But is the mess up a wrong? Can I learn from it? Actually, yes, I can learn from it. How can I improve? And we need to stop blaming others and stop blaming ourselves for things that we do or have not done, because this is what holds the true potential back. And, yes, I had it when I was younger, and, it's taken me some years, but now I'm at a place where I can say, you know what, I'm confident about who I am as a person. And if I mess up, I mess up, and I'm willing to hold my hands up. But I'm also willing to say it's not a failure; it's an opportunity to grow. Absolutely. And so that's how I see myself as my life, and also in my startup, in my business.
Yeah, this is really refreshing to hear, because these are conversations James and I have had with amongst ourselves for the last 3, 4, 5 years. So it's really nice hearing somebody else kind of echoing the same sentiments. But on the point of negative reinforcement, I think I was telling a friend of mine this recently, because he constantly has trouble with staying driven about something. He wants to start a bunch of things, but he never stays driven. He never sticks at it for more than 2-3 weeks to make it a habit. And he always tries to reinforce, oh, if I do this for long enough, I'll become this. I'll become this really like high value version of myself. But he looks too far ahead into the future. So I said, why don't you actually look the other way? At the beginning, for the first month, look the other way. Turn around and look at the person you'll become if you remain a sloth in all aspects of your life for the next 20 years. Think about how bad of a version of yourself you will be if you do that. And then create contempt for that version of yourself. And use that contempt, that emotional driver, to go to the gym for 4 weeks. Every time you don't want to go to the gym, use the fear of turning into this terrible version of yourself. By the time you've gone to the gym or done whatever it is that you want to do for 4 or 5 weeks, at that point, then you'll have built confidence. You'll actually be confident in who you are. You're confident that I'm no longer just a rank novice at this. I'm actually someone with a little bit of capability. And then it'll become more about positively reaffirming that, okay, I've been doing it for 5 weeks now. Okay, how can I start doing it better? How can I improve? How can I improve each exercise? How can I improve my form? How can I improve like my diet? And then it becomes a snowball effect in the positive direction. But I think initially negative reinforcement can be quite useful.
It can. Yeah, it depends on the circumstance. I remember when I started years ago, I got a trainer and he was like, just do this. I was like, no. That's not the kind of person I am. I want to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. What effect will doing this, leg press, whatever, or Romanian deadlifts, you name it, hip thrust. What am I doing? What effect will that do? And then I remember joining T Nation. I don't know if you guys know it. Comes out of the US. Loved it, got involved, then Bodybuilders Network, and then started reading and learning and doing and practicing and da-da-da-da-da. And then it just becomes second nature, but it takes effort. And I think the problem is that they think that they go for 3 weeks and they're going to get some kind of result, and they're waiting for. They have an idea of what they want, and they don't actually realize what it means to attain those results, and it's a lot longer than you expected.
Absolutely.
So it's not going to happen overnight.
I think Suraj, you made an excellent point. It's like there's almost like an inflection point where you use negative and you start using positive. It's like right at the early days, there's nothing really to spur you on other than like how bad you want it. But then it does get that first time you hear compliments from other people of like, oh, you're looking big today. Oh, you got so much stronger. Like what? And then it starts to feed. It can feed your own ego in a good way actually, because I think sometimes the ego can play a positive role. But it's about trying to get to that inflection point as efficiently as possible and not give up before you get to it. Because as soon as you get there, it's like, oh, this is now a snowball effect. Now, as you said, Electra is like, I have this on automatic. Like this is second nature to me now. But it's always that first before that hockey stick growth. It's the hot spot. Yeah,
and I think
now it's good.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say now it's the other way around. If I don't do at least 4 or 5 times a week, I kick myself. I'm like, no,
like, what the
what's
hell?
wrong? Now you're lazy. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, you're falling off.
Do you ever skip them? No. I could never skip it. I can't bring myself to do it. It's like
yeah, when you're sometimes like when you're traveling and you're on the go, it can be kind of difficult to find the gym. So I do long walks and hurries, and I try to fit something in. But when I'm home, I'm committed 100%. When I'm traveling, if I'm staying long enough in a place, I'll go to a gym, get one of these memberships. But if you're traveling like 10 days on the go, literally, it can be hard. And I in the back of my head, I'm like, oh my God. But I do also think, what is my circumstance? Am I on the couch or am I actually doing something?
Yeah. I think, James, what you said there, that inflection point, in my opinion, is once whatever it is that you're doing becomes a part of your identity. Once it's fully like, I am a person that does this, then it's like, okay, well, how can I start doing it better? It stops being about like, oh, I want to be that person. I would like to be the person that goes to. I'd like to be that person that has their own business. But when you're actually doing it, you're like, oh well, I am that person. I just need to be the best version of that person to be successful.
Yeah.
Fake it till you make it, man. It's a great concept. That kind of I started to deep that as well when I was in my late teens. It's like, if you want to be the person, just embody it, just do it. And I think a big blocker to most people doing the same thing, I think it's very easy to say, is that they feel ashamed by it, or their ego gets in the way, or they don't want to be perceived as a novice. No easy answers for that. I think it just comes down to mental fortitude and actually just writing it out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely mental fortitude. You got to overcome. You got to be able to overcome the negativity and the uphill. Just, it's a boulder. When you push it uphill, it's hard, but when it comes down on the other end, it's smooth. So you got to just manage that.
What? That's a lovely metaphor. I love that. Just like up the mountain, and then as soon as you get to that point, it becomes smooth.
Yeah, boom. Yes, I'll be writing that.
Such a relatable feeling. Electra, we're going to wrap up now, but it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks so much for your time. Maybe just to finish then, like, what are the next kind of few years looking for you? Let's say 3 years, both personally and in terms of your company.
So company-wise, we are raising today. We're looking to, so we've got angels and VCs that we're looking to close with. So the next stage is really just develop, get more features out, get more functionality, and really grow XWorks into what I believe will be the next thing in the recycling trading world. And personally, I'm going to continue growing, evolving, and continue lifting. That's my motto.
Even if it's just a third one, I think that's fine. Like, just keep.
You know what I mean? That's going to help everything else.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for your time, Electra. Take care of yourself.
Really enjoyed it.
Great. Thank you.
All the
Bye.
best with everything. See ya.
Bye-bye.